like he gets a speed boost from every third attack that he lands in quick succession, and that means that one of Renekton's biggest flaws, which is kiting, is kind of answered for by Gnar, who is very good at kiting, at least in his mini Gnar form.
Yeah.
So it's definitely during the laning phase. It might be a little bit rough for Alco, but we also have to remember that when in that mini Gnar form, he's very, very squishy. So if Alco can play it right, get on top of the Gnar at the right times, and use his combo, effectively, he should be able to trade fairly well. And last game we saw Alphari performing fairly better than Alco. I think that's a fair statement to say, considering in the early game, Alphari successfully built up a CS lead, and after dying twice, Alphari still maintained that CS lead. So I feel as though Alphari, coming into this matchup, does seem to have a bit more mechanical prowess, seems to be the slightly stronger individual. However, perhaps now with a different matchup, things might favor Alco a little bit more.
I'm kind of sad we don't get to see the Gangplank again, to be honest. I've really enjoyed getting to watch it for 2 games in a row, because it's been a while since he's been out of bans, basically, for these UK teams. Like, I don't know what it is about UK teams and carry top laners like Fizz, Irelia, Gangplank, but they all seem to be big fans of him, and they get banned back and forth between each team fairly regularly, to be honest. Now, let's talk about a few other things that are going on here, because we've missed out. For example, the fact that Ziggs is getting picked up by Nate Zaros, which is an interesting pickup. Hasn't been as popular as he once was for quite some time. And we've also got Vaynebraum as a bottom lane for Infused. Now, this is something we've seen them run quite a few times, actually. I think we saw them run this against FM about 2 weeks ago when we cast together. So they clearly really like this lane. But the question is, how is it going to fare against a Lucian and an Alistar? Because that is a lot of pressure coming out of the bot lane from TCA.
Yeah, they may very well look for a lane swap. I mean, Alphari could do very well in that 2 versus 1 on a Gnar, and with the double jungle so prevalent in today's meta, he'd be easily, he'd be very comfortable, happily duo jungling with Kino, getting his levels and playing a bit more of a passive early game while they give that Vayne a free lane, give him as much free farm, and then that would leave Arfan available to roam around, try and impact this early to, this very early game in that mid lane, and allow them to get very deep vision, enabling Charlie T to get some very a simple and easy to go laning phase. But Nazaris did actually bring Ziggs out during their game in the promotion tournament against XL, and that was pretty much as you'd expect. There was a farm fest. Really, like, no discredit to Nades. He's familiar with the champion, he's strong in it, but he had no impact. He did well because his team was doing well. And I feel as though that is the sort of champions that these two individuals play. They play mid lane champions that rely on a fair amount of farm. They have good wave clear. They're fairly passive, and they rely on their team doing well in order for them to have a big impact. However, I would argue that Azir has slightly more playmaking potentials than a Ziggs would. Nevertheless, due to the changes with Azir, he's considered much more of a control mage these days rather than an all-in that we used to see a lot of the Shurima shuffles and the very flashy stuff. I mean, obviously he's still very capable of doing those things, but people prefer to see him, at least these days in the LCS, you'll see him much more played as a control mage. I mean, Febiven and Bjergsen have done a very good job of using him as that control mage in narrow spaces like the jungle. So I'm looking forward to seeing Charlie T on Azir, because I feel as though he's very familiar with the champion, he's very good at it, and he really hasn't had that many opportunities to play. Yeah,
it's been a while since we've seen him on it, and I almost wonder if he's sort of like stopped practicing it because it just never gets left open for him. But we'll have to see if he is rusty at all on that champion moving into this game.
So this is our second game of the best of 3 between Team Infused and Terracotta Army UK. This time Terracotta Army will be on the blue side with Team Infused on the red side. And game 1 was a little bit slow. Very early advantage built up for TCA UK. Nevertheless, Infused were able to bring it back in a very slow and calm manner, and they closed the game out very effectively and cleanly, I would argue. So an impressive performance, and Infused looking to repeat that performance coming into game 2.
I tell you, the fights at the end of game 1, it seemed like Infused members were just immortal. I mean, they would not die, with the exception of, I think, who was it actually? I think it maybe was Wawa who died towards the end of that last game. whilst they were pushing onto the Nexus. But yeah, I mean, they had a very long period of time where they were just dodging everything, not dying to the damage that was coming out. They got very far ahead. This time around, looking at the comps, I feel like Ziggs was a little bit of an odd pick. Like, maybe it was just picked for the lane, because they have a lot of playmaking potential on some of these other champions. You know, Renekton has a strong early game. You've got Rek'Sai, who obviously is great at ganking. Alistar, who can set things up for you. Lucian's damage is respectable early on, especially in comparison with Vayne's. But then they've got this Ziggs, who is a very farm-heavy, controlling, pushing mage. I'm not sure if they'll be able to utilize that properly here.
And it makes you wonder why they didn't go for something like a Victor. I mean, what does Ziggs really do better than a Victor? And massive misposition there, perhaps. That was a little bit of lag in the middle lane, nevertheless. I'm sure the pause will be resolved fairly soon. And yeah, so, but as we were saying about the minute, it makes you wonder why they didn't decide to lock in that Victor. I mean, we saw it last game.
Even an Orianna.
Yeah, I mean, an Orianna could have worked as well, but you know, Victor's still strong, and it's something that we see all the time in most regions. This is Azir versus Victor matchup. And while it is a pretty boring and beaten to death matchup, the reason it's played so often is because both champions do fairly well against one another. And it surprises me that they decided not to go for that. He offers a fair much more control than Ziggs does. He has very good poke and wave clear available to him. And it just makes me wonder, like, it brings into question Nade's champion pool a little bit. You know, it makes you wonder, why have they decided to go for this Ziggs over the Victor? And personally, I would just say that's a preference pick initially. Yeah. It's just something that he likes to play, and it's what's very interesting that he actually went Ignite with it. I mean, you can already see he took a lot of harass in that early game, and trying to walk up, I guess he wants to play this lane pretty aggressively.
I think probably the harass he took was mostly due to lag or something like that. But at the same time, the Ignite pick, I feel like that was kind of just a mistake. You know, it does shore up his earlier game weakness. You know, we were talking about the fact that he doesn't really have that same early game spike like someone like Rek'Sai or Renekton. But moving on into the later stages of the game, you look across at Infused lineup, and they have a lot of slows, crowd controls. You know, taking something like Barrier to deal with some of the damage coming in, or maybe even heal, I think would have been more potent. I don't know. I do question that choice a little bit, and I think that if he doesn't do a really good job in the laning phase, this is going to go badly for TCA. You know, he just doesn't have... well, their comp just doesn't have a sort of easy way of winning, where they all work in concert with one another. I think they all do different things well, and I don't know if these are like the three great flavors that work great together, or whether or not they're just, you know, mixing pepper with lemons.
That was the first thing you thought of, mixing peppers with lemons.
Lemons and peppers actually probably do go together pretty well.
I would say it's like mixing peppers with SanDisk hard drive, probably.
SanDisk hard drive?
Yeah, probably.
Anyway. Yeah. Moving swiftly on.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a bit of a delay coming out from the side of TCA. They are dealing with a bit of lag right now, but that should be resolved fairly quickly, I do believe. And we can talk about this bottom lane matchup a little bit more. As you said, the Infused do like this Vayne. It is something that they've seen a lot in the past. And Arfan has played a lot of Braum. It's something that he's very comfortable on, and I've seen it a lot in his solo queue games.
Even prior to the buffs, I saw him playing Braum a decent amount.
Like, I really enjoy Braum. He's one of my go-to supports. He's a great champion, and I feel as though it's just that Winter's Bite just offers a lot, I feel. Being able to pretty much stun whoever you want, assuming you can land an auto-attack or an ability onto them. It's just a useful thing to have. So, you know, obviously down to the individual preference, and with the recent buffs, he is considered a very strong support, but at the same time, you can see the harass coming out from Alistar. Wow. Pretty good.
Fat Kid Bud pretty much just ignored the trade there. He was going for CS, which
level 2
didn't end up going that badly for them. They do get level 2 earlier as a result of that. 3 stacks of the Silver Bolts means that they win that trade. So the fact that he was hitting minions, it looked a bit odd to begin with, but allowing them to hit level 2 earlier is a big deal, especially on something like Vayne. You know, you really want to have both Tumble and Silver Bolts in order to trade effectively.
Yeah, and I quite like seeing this coming out from the side of Infused. I've always considered Vayne to have a pretty weak early game, and her laning phase, I would argue, is very largely dictated by how the supports play. Because assuming you can have a lot of, assuming you can try and draw away the focus, which I feel Arfan does a very good job of, it means that Bud on that Vayne can trade very well. And you could see that right there. The moment Arfan was taking the brunt of the damage, it meant that Bud had a clear avenue to go in and do the damage that he needed to do. So I do like seeing Vayne played in this way.
Yeah, and looking at the top lane, you know, quite frequently you see these matchups in top lane where it's just like fighting with wet noodles. Neither guy is really doing too much to put pressure on his opponent. This time around, we've got two guys fighting with like dry, bristly, sharp noodles that are actually doing quite a lot of damage. You know, they're making some waves up there in top lane.
Yeah, nevertheless, it is still top lane, and I feel as though out of all the lanes, it is one of the least exciting lanes to watch, especially without a gangplank available. You know, I miss the day. Like, I'll tell you what, I don't miss the days of Renekton, Shyvana, and Trundle, where you pretty much saw those three champions every single game. But fortunately, with the massive item diversity, I'm sad that we don't see any Darius, because he had some big changes.
No Juggernauts yet at all.
Yeah, no Juggernauts at all. But I guess it is a new patch, and I suppose teams are a little bit unaware of what's best in the current meta, so they're just sticking to what they know.
I guess you can kind of count Skarner being banned every single game as the Juggernauts having an impact.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they have freed up slots, so, like, maybe we wouldn't have seen Rek'Sai or Braum get through this game if it wasn't for Skarner being buffed. So, I don't know. It has had an effect, but it's a fairly tame one, at least for now.
So what's interesting, though, is that Gnar actually wasn't really affected very much by the Juggernaut item changes, because they don't work very well on ranged champions.
Hang on a second. Bot lane, Arfan is getting ganked here by Raisins, who's actually still going in. I think that's a little bit maybe too aggressive here. First Blood instantly picked up by Kino as he pops into the lane. Now Bardiono, he is going to go down as well. Fat Kid Bud picks that one up, even though he was on about 0.5 health or something to that effect. But very, very nice counter gank coming in for Infused, and a little bit of over-eagerness or over-aggression for the side of Terracotta Army.
A very strange aggression coming out from Raisins. They didn't have any vision of the river. They didn't know where the enemy jungler was, and Bud was basically under his tower. Going that deep after pretty much all of the summoners were used from Bartiono is a very questionable decision, and we said this last game, the decision-making coming out from TCA was very questionable, and we were hoping that during this game they might be able to improve that, but this early stages of the game, it feels like they're still making very similar mistakes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And another thing that I think is interesting to note here is that Alku's Renekton in top lane is struggling again. You know, last game we saw it, arguably even more so than this game so far. But Alfari is really doing a good job in this matchup, and because so much of the pressure from Raisins so far, I mean, it's only 6 minutes, has been devoted to other lanes, perhaps necessarily, I think Alku is struggling even more, will be struggling more. Charlie T, though, he's getting 3-man ganked here in the mid lane, flashes away, and does manage to get onto the other side of Alistar for that headbutt. So he survives. That is actually quite bad for the side of TCA, because they just invested in that roam coming out of Bartiono, and that's allowing a freeze to come in from the bottom lane of Infused. You would normally not expect Vayne to be able to pull that off too easily, only 7 minutes into the game, but she has managed to do so.
Oh, Kino been caught out in the river.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of damage coming down onto him, but I don't think it's enough. Nadezaros is very low in that middle lane. It's unlikely he's going to be able to make much happen. Now, Alku needs to be careful. He's got that ultimate to gain some health. Alfari just ran out of Meganar, so he's not going to be able to turn around and trade with this anytime soon. Has to flash on out of there. Good plan by him, I would say. And
that's what we were talking about during Champ Select. If Alco picks the right time to pick a fight, then he can win that 1v1 matchup. The very squishy situation of the very squishy champion that is Mini Gnar means that you can trade with the high early damage coming out from Renekton. So Alco, good use of timing, nicer management of his rage as well to get as much damage off as possible. And you can see he's not doing badly now that he, he's trading fairly well in the top lane. So he will probably TP back into that top lane, and it's decided he is going to go for an early Black Cleaver, which I quite like because you can see a lot of armor being rushed early on for Alfari.
I think a lot might actually be an understatement. Bot lane, though, Arfan, he gets knocked into that tower, but it doesn't deter Infused's bot lane from trying to go for some more pressure here. Fat Kid Bud has been doing an excellent job of landing his procs of Silver Bolts. That is really the thing which is keeping him winning in these trades. He is maxing it first. It's on level 3 at the moment, which is an interesting decision. I like that against an Alistair, because especially through Unbreakable build, you have basically no kill pressure on him unless you decide to max that first. I think it will do slightly less against Jakamaka, but overall in the lane, it's a decent choice.
It's what you do if you're going to go for that attack speed build, which is pretty much what most Vanes do.
Whoa! They are going for it here, and that's the true damage. Paying dividends onto Bartiono. Fat Kid Bud picking up an early kill. And very, very nice job by him. Like you were saying, you know, picking up early Silver Bolts can be excellent when you are going for early attack speed. And there are so many different builds that Vanes can go. Normally they start with a Blade of the Ruined King, though.
Yeah, and what Doublelift used to do quite a lot was go Bloodthirster into Phantom Dancer, and if that was the case, then generally it would be better to max Tumble, because you're going to have more attack damage, and Tumble empowers your auto attack, so it sort of makes sense. Meanwhile, Silver Bolts, you would max that if you would max that if you're going for the attack speed build, because you want to get them off as often as possible. So the more attack speed you have, the more Silver Bolts you can get, you know, in a given time. So it makes sense to go for that build path if that's what you want to do. Meanwhile, we see Charlie T might be in some trouble.
Oh, great knockback with the Empire's Divide, though. Stopping Raisins from going in. Actually, he's walking forward, though. Nade Rust just going to ignite him. Barrier keeping him safe for now, but it's not enough. Nade Rust picking it up. Bartiono roaming up towards this middle lane. Going to stop Arfan from getting immediately to safety. He is just going to laugh a little bit and walk away.
So you could see there that Charlie T was told by Kino that Kino was going to come into the lane and help him out. But unfortunately for Charlie T, Kino just took a little bit too long to arrive, and then he kept trading with nades. And when Nades R Us has Ignite in the lane, you can't really trade very well when pretty much all your summoners are down. So a bit of a miscalculation coming out from Charlie T will end up in him losing his life to Nades R Us, and that's pretty good for Nades, considering he is playing that Ziggs. Any early advantages that he can gain will help in a fairly large way. So well played by the side of TCA to get a small way back into this game.
Yeah, I mean, they are actually 2k down at the moment, so they do need to be careful. We are seeing an attempted gank in the bottom lane at the moment from Raisins. He wants to shut down this 2-for-0 Vayne at only 10 minutes. That is definitely a scary thing. You know, you would not expect Vanes to be doing that well this early. One thing I do think is interesting about the skill build, we've talked a lot about it already, but one final note here is that Fat Kid Bud actually went so hard onto the Silver Bolts plan that he didn't even pick up an early rank 2 of Tumble, which is kind of surprising. You normally want to get that just for the cooldown, even if you are going for that Silver Bolts build. So he was really just confident that he was going to be able to land auto attacks for days. Nade Russ getting ganked. This might be a revenge kill coming out of Charlie T and Kino. There's going to be an ultimate coming down. That's a lot of damage. Kino, he picks it up though. Nade Russ going down. Very, very nice job by Infused to get that return kill.
Incredibly close, though. I honestly felt like Charlie T was going to lose his life there, and you can see how close it was on the other side. Alco very close to losing his life as well, and a lot more early aggression coming out from Infused in this second game. They're not going to play so much for this later game. They're abusing the fact that they have a decent early game, but you'd think that with an Azir that does very well as he scales into getting these items, same for Vayne who scales very well there, they are playing very aggressive in this early game, and I feel as though that just comes down to the confidence that these players have on their champion. So very well played by Infused, and to be honest, I feel like you can see the difference in how Infused play when they're playing with their main AD carrying.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in this bottom lane where they really have been making far more confident plays. Bartiono actually going to get knocked up here by a Glacial Fissure, and this might be a repeat of earlier. Actually flashing forward, Fat Kid Bud with a beautiful play getting on to Jakamaka, but we do see teleports down from both of the top laners. That is going to result in a quick kill for Alku, and a retreat here out of Infused as Raisins comes as well. Arfan gets locked up there, falls as well. Hip Hop Hoppity out of there from Alfari, and he is going to get away. Kino has to body slam over that wall. Nice trade, 1 for 2, going over to Terracotta Army. Jakamaka being the only casualty.
And so in that instance, Infused got a little bit too cocky. They overstayed their welcome. And they pretty much dived the tower to get that kill onto Jakamaka, which obviously is very valuable. Thanks to that, Bud was able to pick up his Blade of the Ruined King, which is going to put him leaps and bounds ahead now of Jakamaka. But regardless, they overstay. Renekton teleporting in when Alfari didn't even have his Mega Gnar. I mean, you're always going to lose that, and you saw that very nice play from Bartioni. He did have to use his flash to be able to pick up the kill onto Arfan, but nevertheless, they do pick up 2 kills, and that's going to be a good pickup for the side of TCA. They need whatever early advantage they can get, but the problem with that is they Infused are going to get this massive minion wave in the bottom, and that's just going to extend their lead even further.
I was about to point that out too, actually. The fact that they didn't really lose any CS from that, and Vayne picked up a kill, means it wasn't a bad trade from the perspective of bot lane in a vacuum, which, you know, is worth looking at considering how good Vayne is as you scale into the late game. I think the big thing that TCA got out of that is Alku did come out with a kill or two, and, you know, the fact that he has been struggling a little bit against Alfari in the top lane, you know, look at the CS advantage, about 10 at the moment for Alfari, is quite a big deal. Now, that said, Cullen coming out in the bottom lane is really going to put pressure down on the Fat Kid Bud. He is going to struggle to CS now with the wave pushing in a way that he probably doesn't want it to, given his health value.
I'm definitely inclined to agree with you there, and even though he has built up a small advantage, he still needs to be very wary of the damage coming out from Lucian, because he does have that BF sword completed as well as the pickaxe, so definitely a fair amount of damage still available to Jakamaka on that Lucian, and with the recent very small buffs to Lucian, he's definitely a decent pick. Meanwhile, Alco going very aggressive on Alfari, just as a pause comes through. We will find out for you who that pause was from, but yeah, in the meantime, we can see that Alfari might be in a little bit of trouble. He does have his flash available, as well as the jump available. So Alfari probably going to be able to get out of that situation, and it does look like that Nades Arters is the one suffering from a few technical difficulties. Regardless, that gives us a brief opportunity to give you a bit of a rundown of the game so far.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think Infused, they're clearly in the lead, right? I mean, they've got 2.2k up on their opponents, but especially given what we're seeing in the top lane right now, that is certainly something we could change at any moment. And I think, especially looking towards the first dragon fights, for example, you know, the reason why Fat Kid Bud is having a good time so far is that it's just the bot lanes fighting against each other most of the time. You saw, as soon as we saw pressure from Raisins and Alku, it looked a little bit less clear-cut, because Alku, I mean, he is a strong force to be reckoned with early game, especially if you're an AD carry. He's going to be getting on you and putting down a lot of pressure. So looking towards maybe some of these early dragon fights, I think that's an opportunity for TCA to make something happen. Because certainly if they let the game go on too long, it's just not going to go well for them. I mean, you're against Azir, you're against Vayne. You even have, I would argue that Braum is quite strong in the late game, because his passive, you can imagine that it scales with attack speed, right? It kind of does.
Yes, yes.
So the fact that there's going to be more attack speed on Charlie T, with his passive scaling up his attack speed, as well as on Vayne, you know, it's going to be easy for them to proc that passive onto everyone they want to. The ultimates are just going to be bigger and better. Glacial fissures all over the place. I think really we need to be seeing more and more happen from TCA very soon. We are going to get back into it, though. Alfari, he is able to flash and hop on out of there without too much trouble. A little bit anticlimactic, but you know what? We'll give it to him.
He does burn his summoners though, so that's still a successful gank in my eyes. And what you were mentioning about Braum scaling well into the late game, you also have to remember that his W actually gives bonus armor and magic resist. So whoever he jumps onto gets actually slightly tankier, and that's always a useful thing coming into the late stages of the game. And something that I was actually going to mention was that we actually saw last game a very early dragon coming out from Infused. They had a 7-minute dragon in that last game, but they recognized that to our top lane, especially the jungler being top lane, they saw that as an opportunity to pick up that early drake. Meanwhile, we see Infused bot lane might be going aggressive.
Bot lane, they really wanted to go in here, I think, but they're not going to be able to pull it off. This has drawn the attention of Raisins towards this bottom lane, and meanwhile, Kino is sitting in that bush. Unaware, TCA might try and look for something here. It looks like Raisins is going to back up towards his red buff, though. Kind of unfortunate timing, actually. You know, if red buff hadn't been up right now, I think he probably would have committed a little bit more to that gank.
And look at the vision control coming out for Infused. You can see nice ward setup around the bottom half of the map. They realize that nothing much is really going on in that top half, so they're dedicating their vision to this bottom half. They've extended their vision line a little bit towards the enemy half of the jungle, but they are keeping most of it around the river and their entrances, so nice to see. And this is the problem with being kited and
Oh, this is disgusting. I feel kind of dirty watching that. I mean, it really is just mean.
Oh, Arfan and Bud.
Yeah, they're looking for something here on Jakamaka. Or maybe
Kino's
Bartiona.
behind as well.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for him to close this distance safely, though. We are going to see them jump forward. Glacial Fissure doesn't actually land onto anyone. And Bartiona, he's taking a lot of damage, though. There's the stun up. Unbreakable Will comes down, but is it going to be enough? True damage from Ignite and those True Silver Bolts doing a lot. Arfan is trying to run away here. There's an Ignite onto him. He stand unites to Kino, and they get the stun onto Raisins. There's the Explosive Cask. Beautifully executed plays in the bot lane from Infused. Going to pick them up 2 quick kills.
Yeah, very well played there by Bud. Really utilizing his tumbles to position himself very well, and a nice follow-up there from Kino to set up that second kill for Bud very easily. So sitting at 5-1, that's going to be one scary Vayne already coming into this 20-minute mark, and things are not looking good for TCA. I think we can all agree that in terms of AD carry and duelists, Vayne is probably one of the best.
Oh, absolutely, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Fat Kid Bud to find small skirmishes or duels this game. I mean, something like a Renekton, we saw it last game, it's going to be inclined to split push. Given how ahead Fat Kid Bud is, we might even see a split pushing Vayne this game. You know, the only problem with that is that there's a lot of ways for TCA to make catches, but at the same time, if Alphari is also split pushing, you know, no matter where you decide to deal with, something else is being let through the cracks, and it's going to be hard for them, I think, TCA that is, to really deal with pressure across the map.
Yep. I'm definitely inclined to agree. Meanwhile, we can see, unfortunately for Jakamaki, he still hasn't even completed his Infinity Edge yet. If we just have a quick look at the gold, he's sitting at, Bud is sitting at 2,600 gold, which means he's not quite going to have enough for that Phantom Dancer. I stand corrected, he already had a dagger available to him, which meant that he was able to pick up that Phantom Dancer. So now he's got 2 major items completed before Jakamaka even has 1. So things are looking pretty bad right now for the side of TCA. Meanwhile, we can see something very interesting coming out. Like, we can see a Blasting Wand coming out from Charlie T now. With the AP item changes, not many things build out a Blasting Wand anymore. So perhaps he's going to be heading towards a very early Void Step.
That would be an interesting pickup here. I'm not sure if it's strictly speaking necessary, but against an Athene's on Nadezaurus, it's certainly going to deal more damage to him at the very least. Now, TCA, they're grouping up in this middle lane right now. Do you think this is the best plan for them? I mean, they've got Vayne pushing top lane. They also have Alphari pushing the bottom, just like we just talked about. And they're clearly trying to make a pickup here with both Raisins and Alku. The problem is, I'm actually not sure they can pull that off.
I honestly feel as though Infused are just going to keep playing this passive style. Again, their team composition scaled very well into the late game, and all they really need is for TCA to pick a fight that they just can't win. And against that Vayne, unless they plan on one-shotting Vayne, I honestly don't think they're going to be able to one-shot. Meanwhile, Charlie.
Yeah, he needs to get on out of there. Mega Bomb coming in, but not really doing that much through a barrier. Alku is on the flank, maybe looking to dash in here, slice and dice some fools, but is not going to find a good opening for it. Meanwhile, top lane, it goes down 1-3-1 for Infused, doing some serious work.
I honestly think Fat Kid Bud could 2v1 that.
Oh,
I
agree.
honestly think he has the potential.
It doesn't even need to, though, because we're going to see a teleport. That is the get out now signal for the side of TCA. Flash forward, Fat Kid Bud wants none of that ridiculous nonsense. He is just going to go pick up himself up and kill.
I quite like that they gave the kill over to Alphari, because Vayne has 5 kills. Does he need more? Not really. Let's share the gold around. Let's try and get our other members of the team a little bit of extra gold.
Nar scales pretty nicely, too.
Yeah, he definitely does. And it's interesting to see that he's decided to go full tank this game. I do respect that decision against the laning phase of a Renekton. I wonder whether or not he's going to bother building any damage, considering they do have plenty of damage available from Charlie T and Fat Kid Bud. And now it does look like, speaking of Fat Kid Bud, he's going to start pressuring this tier 2 tower.
With Kino here as well, that's going to help him clear the wave if he needs to. I don't see a quick enough response here coming out of TCA. The tower is certainly going to go down. They're actually putting pressure onto Raisins as well. Bartiona having to rotate up here to stop anything further happening. And meanwhile, you know, what is TCA doing to answer this? Basically nothing.
I like that these constant rotations are basically preventing Ziggs' greatest strength. So you can't siege against a Ziggs, basically, because his wave clear is like a Nivea level, and it's just ridiculous. And as long as he has some mana, he can wave clear, and you know, he just throws a bomb out like that and boom, you no longer
what
have a
happened to the wave?
So that's basically why you can't siege against the Ziggs, and by putting Vayne in this side lanes, no one can 1v1 her. They have to keep Ziggs in the mid lane to wave clear against the Azir. And that basically means that they can constantly take these side towers, and they don't need to take mid tower. All they need to do is take the inhibitors on either side to be able to take the mid tower. So I like these plays, these rotational map plays coming out from Infused, really realizing that they just can't siege against the Ziggs and working around that.
Yeah, I do think it is very nice strategy and tactics coming out here from Infused. They do try and secure themselves that red buff, but fail to do so. Mid lane Charlie T has done a great job of pushing down this tower. He is getting ganked here, but what an Emperor's Divide. With that Shurima's Legacy passive, it is really allowing the rest of Infused time to get here. Nades are us going down to that Glacial Fissure. Bartiono and co trying to keep up the fight, but underneath that tower from Azir, they were taking a lot of pressure, having to get on out of their flash burned by Bartiono as Kino tried to put pressure on him on the side. Now we are seeing a rotation down from Fat Kid Bud. They've decided enough of this split pushing nonsense. Let's just brute force it down the middle lane. And they are in a position to do a lot of work here. Can Alku really make a dent in this top lane, though? That is kind of the question I find myself asking. He is doing a good job of taking down that inner tower, but I feel like that's a trade that, frankly, Infused are happy to make.
Yeah, they're okay with that. They're going to send Charlie T back to deal with that wave, I do believe. Actually, he just seemed blissfully unaware. No, he is going to head over and pick that one up. So that's going to be fine. They're not going to be able to gain much more from that. Meanwhile, you can now see that the gold lead extends to 5,000. And I wonder if they're actually going to lose their mid tower as a result. They're not really in a position to defend it, but Budkid might have other things in mind.
Oh, he does get knocked up immediately, but being in stealth makes it difficult for the rest of their team to get onto him. He is very slow, but he is just tumbling out of there, managing to keep his distance. Charlie T instantly pops Bartiono, flashes forward, doesn't really accomplish too much with that one. Our fan trying to get the slowdown to Nades Arus. He finds it. There's the boomerang toss as well. Too many slows for Nades Arus to deal with. He goes down to Charlie T. 3 quick kills going across Team Infused. They're looking maybe like they want to rotate towards this Baron buff. Yeah, they've certainly got a lot of damage for it.
Yeah, Kino is full health, and he is pretty tanky now that he's completed that Frozen Heart, so it is very likely they're going to be able to pick this up. But perhaps Jakamaka has something he wants to say about that. You can see the Baron health getting pretty low. They are going to be able to pick themselves up this Baron at 23.5 minutes, which is going to be a fantastic lead for the side of Infused, and that's going to extend their gold lead up to 8,000. And you can see there Raisins just overcommitting under that middle tower. He really wanted to pick up the kill onto Fat Kid Bud, and unfortunately they just weren't able to do it. And I feel as though Raisins this game really hasn't had the best series. He's overextended a few too many times. His positioning, his times to engage, just I guess he's just having a bit of a rough day, and this series really hasn't been the best, one of his better showings.
When is the last time you've seen a jungler without an upgraded trinket by 24 minutes? I mean, that is a pretty clear indicator of how far behind he is falling. And to be honest, in the last game, he wasn't really having a great showing either. Maybe he's just a little bit off of his game at the moment, but it is allowing for a lot of plays to come out of Infused. You know, they can split push more effectively because Raisins just isn't in position to deal with it. Our fan trying to catch out Jakamaka there with the Glacial Fissure, doesn't get it. Kino is finding himself in the dice position, has to body slam on out of there. Culling coming out, not really doing too much damage at this point though. A successful disengage coming out the way of Infused. Look at this though, I mean, that was 5 versus 3. We've got the 1-3-1 still coming out from Infused. And the pressure is mounting and mounting and mounting for TCA. They just don't have any easy way of dealing with this split.
Yeah, and I quite like this build coming out from Charlie T as well. He recognizes how strong he is and how strong his team is, so he's decided to build a little bit more damage, realizing that him and Bud are pretty much the main damage sources from their team. And look, you can see Alfari, this is how you split push if you're interested. Look, Alfari's drawing 2 members to the top lane, so what are Infused doing? Pushing the bottom lane. They don't have the numbers advantage to be able to deal with it, so they're going to pick themselves up a free tower. This is how you split push efficiently. This is how you use the Baron buff efficiently. And you can see that, Charlie T's dash gets interrupted there, but yeah, very well played by Infused, really using this Baron the way it should be.
Absolutely, and Alfari, you know, he is in a position where he can easily duke it out with Alku in that top lane. We have now seen another rotation coming out of Infused. They've sent 3 members back to mid. Just going to go and let Fat Kid Bud do his thing in the bottom lane. He's not making a huge impact. Alku, though, in the top lane, actually getting caught out a little bit here with that Gnar ultimate. Kino coming up, might set them up for a kill here. Great explosive cast. That's a lot of damage onto Alku. Good knockup by Bartiono. He is so low, but Alku is gonna get out of there. Problem is, by having to reinforce the top lane, mid lane has lost tower. This has given maybe an opportunity for TCA to find a fight. They do pick up a kill on Charlie T. Kino is knocked into a bad position. Alfari is doing a good job putting some pressure down, but Fat Kid Bud, I don't really feel like Infused care about losing 2 members up there. They just got an inhibitor. They did manage to pick up 1 kill, and the Nexus towers are being targeted right now by Bud. He is just able to do whatever he wants. He might even be able to turn around and look for some kills here. Depends on how well they chain together their CC. There's the heal. Alku is taking a lot of damage. Good tumble. He picks up 1. Can he get out of here or maybe even pick up another? Bartiono is very low. Flash forward by Raisins. And the great stand behind me, giving him that little bit of extra armor. Shut down coming in from Bartiono with that Flash Pulverize. Does finally manage to pick up the kill onto Fat Kid Bud. That's going to be Arfan following shortly. But again, do they really mind losing that? They picked up a huge amount in that bottom lane. They've made a lot of space on the map for them to do other things, stealing away red buff. This is all about Infused, man. This is their game to win.
Yeah, well, it's their game to lose at this point. I mean, if TCA want a chance of winning, they're going to need Infused to make a massive mistake, because as we saw there in the bottom lane, you just can't basically leave that Vayne in a 1v1. You have to send more members. I mean, it took realistically all 5 of them to kill both, well, the bottom lane of Infused, and that was when Vayne was in a 2v1, had to use all of her summoners, and he's just Fat Kid Bud is just so strong right now. Kino might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, gets interrupted during that last auto attack. Nicely timed by Raisins. Chilling Smite, trying to keep him close enough here. Explosive Cast doesn't actually do very much. Bartiono is getting close enough, and he misses his combo. That is bad news. Kino gonna get on out of there. Meanwhile, we're seeing Charlie T push down that mid lane, apply a little bit of pressure. This is what Infused has been all about this game.
Yeah, with Drake spawning in 30 seconds. They might look to go for that, however, I'd actually expect them really to keep Vayne in the middle lane while they send the rest of them in the top, because as I said, no one can 1v1 Fat Kid Bud right now. And with Azir sitting in the bottom lane, it'll be extremely easy for them to siege. And the only reason they really lost that fight in the top lane was because Charlie T was a little bit out of position and he died to a Mega Inferno Bomb from Nade Zaraz. But if they keep him in the top lane, his poke and harass will be pretty decent. But interesting decision. It looks like they've decided to send Fat Kid Bud to go pick themselves up the Drake while they keep the siege going. I'm not entirely sure why they've decided to do that, but nevertheless, they will pick up that 3rd Drake, and they're going to continue to siege on these towers.
I feel like it's just one of those instances where it's like, well, I wouldn't mind a dragon. Might as well go for a
Run really
cheeky
fast.
Drake. In any case, you know, regarding the positioning of Charlie T, I actually kind of like leaving him in one of the 2 lanes that is still, or still has one of those inhibitor towers available, because he can then use Shurimi's legacy in a sort of meaningful way to give himself a position to retreat to if needed. Alfari is getting a lot of damage onto him.
No.
Misses the Gnar ultimate. That is not good. But at the same time, guess who just took down a Nexus turret and is looking to kill Alku? Fat Kid Bud just keeping up this pressure. There's an open inhibitor in the top lane. Infused want it. They are going to go for it, too. There's a lot of damage onto Charlie T. Nade Zaras, I mean, he hasn't been having the best game, but he hasn't been having the worst either. 5 for 3. He is doing good damage. The problem is he's not doing it to the people he needs to do it to.
And this is what I was talking about, the mid laners for both teams. They rely on their team doing well. Engage from Bartiono.
Yeah, he's trying to find a pick here. Kino does get knocked up. Raisins is taking a lot of ambient damage, though. Charlie T picking that one up. And Bartiono, even with that Unbreakable Will, is going to go down. A second Nexus tower falls in that short amount of time. Jumped forward by Fat Kid. 3 shots and you're out. He picks up a kill. He gets another one along with Kino on 2. Nades are us, and that is going to be the best of 3 series, going over to Infused in a quick 2-0. Very commanding performances, I thought. Very strong play. And I have to say, you know, the first game, obviously, they were playing with a sub. Wawa is not their starting AD carry. The second game, Fat Kid Bud, showing why he is. That was a very impressive performance.
Yeah, both him and Arfan pretty much winning every single 2v2 trade that they tried to engage on in that bottom lane. And pretty much the entire game, Infused were controlling TCA. The first one was a little bit rough in the early game, but nevertheless, they pretty much dictated the entire pace of that game, and fair play to the team of Infused, much stronger performance, and we finally got to see Charlie T's